Hello and welcome to Dave and Marlow, a Blazers Edge podcast about the Portland Trailblazers and the NBA and all kinds of good stuff. I'm Dave Deckard, here together with Marlow Ferguson. And wow, Marlow, since we talked last, the playoffs have halfway resolved. Let's start in the West. The Denver Nuggets swept the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers made a really good run at the Game 4, the deciding game. It came down to LeBron James, ball in his hand, last shot, didn't make it. Denver celebrates going to the finals for the very first time in their history. 10 seconds later, LeBron James says, you know what, I might retire. And all of a sudden, everybody's talking about LeBron. Now, there are mixed feelings about that, but let's start here. Do you think there's any way that LeBron hangs it up at this point?
I don't know. He still a great player that I think when you look at his numbers, you know, if anybody else had done what he did in the postseason, I think you'd look at it with a lot more appreciation. But since it's LeBron James and he's got that such a high standard, you know, people kind of look at it and they say, oh, he's declining. He didn't play up to standards and things like that. I thought he played well. I thought he played a little bit passive in that second half, you know, to go for 31 in the first half and finish with 40. You know, you can't take anything away from that. But it's tough, you know. And if this was his last game, I think I'm not going to look at it and say he came up short. I think he had an excellent series, excellent game. So all things considered, it was a fun series, and you know, hopefully you see him back again though.
I think if he quits, it's not because he's tired of LeBron. I think he's tired of the stuff, is my guess. You know, that team was a soap opera all year long. Look, Denver deserves to be where they are, but you'd think the Lakers could win at least one game. You know? And it's like, I don't know. It just feels like some kind of mental, emotional weariness. And keep in mind that LeBron doesn't know anything but his team. You know, everywhere he's been, the spotlight has been bright, the expectations have been high, and it's all centered around him. He's supposed to have Anthony Davis with him, who's been up and down, in part, I think, because the spotlight is upon LeBron, and AD was the same way, right? And it's hard to adjust. But it just feels like LeBron is walking down a really wide road, increasingly by himself, without even realizing that on a side street there's help, and there's a different kind of basketball to be played, but he's never done it in his life. And I'm not sure that it's ever going to be his role to do it. So I just think as he goes along, it's going to be like, I increasingly can't carry this. All I know is how to carry this. It's not going to work. And there's all this drama around me because I can't do it. I can see him walking away from that, but I'm sure it's not time for him to walk away from basketball.
Yeah, it's weird. You know, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Like I remember having this same conversation with LeBron and his teams 15 years ago, you know, 2009, 2008, sometimes he just doesn't have the help that he needs. And he's at a point now where, you know, he's almost 40 years old. He really shouldn't be expected to be, you know, the guy like that every single night. Like, Anthony Davis should be a little bit consistent. I'm sure the Lakers probably couldn't have expected for D'Angelo Russell to basically play off the floor. And they targeted him on defense and made him basically unusable. So it's going to be a long slumber for the Lakers. Not that I'm complaining about that. I think it'll be kind of fun to see them kind of deal with what we've had to deal with. But I think when they look back at that series, you know, it shows they're actually pretty close. You know, it reminded me a lot of that 2019 series with Portland and Golden State, where every game was close. It was a competitive sweep, but they lost by, was it 6-4? They had one game lost by 13, so it won't do it justice. But they played well. I think they can bring it back next year with a little bit different and maybe have a better result.
Well, and to be clear, I would say I place 50% of the blame on the Lakers for who they surrounded LeBron with. Now, I think AD, it was a curious move to begin with. I mean, you don't want a backseat drive because they did win the title in 2020 with him. But like that kind of power forward-ish center thing, even if your power forward can go outside like LeBron, is always a weird thing. But I think they haven't got the right mix. I think they did fantastically, though, at the trade deadline. I mean, getting rid of Russell Westbrook, which was the huge mistake. And I think they did all right. So I think only half the blame goes there. I'm not sure LeBron, I mean, for all that he is, and he is certainly in the top 2 discussion for greatest players of all time. For all that he is, I'm not entirely sure that he's seamless in making the people around him better in any other way than this is blindingly the greatest player of all time, and therefore automatically on the floor he makes everybody better, sure. But, I look at like Chris Bosh and I look at AD, and, there have been other examples. Like the more people you have around LeBron who are also blinding talents, the more those other people dim in LeBron's light. And again, I think up to now, no arguments, it's worked. But, he's 38, 39. Some of those other lights got to shine around him now.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And players have said that before. Our guy Rodney Hood said it. Kevin Love's. They've gone on record in saying that there's a lot of pressure that comes with playing for a guy like that. And it's provided a question on if he's actually the team better than everybody thinks he is. So there's a discussion to be had about that. I look back at that series this past week. CJ used to say it's a make or miss league, and the Lakers just couldn't make shots down the stretch. Other than Austin Reeves, it was kind of hard to find a guy that could hit a 3-pointer. So, a lot of that stuff kind of comes down to, just being ready for the moment. So I'm on the side of LeBron there, where I think that, guys need to step up a little bit, but you can see both sides of it. And you saw it here, but to your credit, like exactly what you said, they were 2-10 and made a trip to the Western Conference Finals. So everybody can say that. So I think it's a successful season, all things considered, for them.
Yeah, from where it started, it sure is. Now, 2 things are of interest there. I think one, illustrative to Blazers fans. I mean, LA couldn't hit the 3 all season. They resurrected that a little bit, but eventually it got to them, right? And this is what you got to understand about deep playoff runs. It's not just talent, right? It's talent that can produce under almost any situation. There are one of 2 things that happen. Either you're so good that nobody can get you in a situation where you can't excel. Like maybe you have weaknesses, but there's no way that they can overcome you or push you in that corner, right? Or you basically don't have a lot of serious weaknesses, because when you get to that level, somebody's going to Eric Spoelstra you. Somebody's going to make you do and win by the things that you do, if not worst, at least 3rd or 4th best. And your 3rd or 4th best plan has got to be series winning worthy. And this is literally true of championship teams. It was true of the Trailblazers back in Clyde Drexler's day. I mean, they ended up losing in the finals a couple times, but they lost honestly. I mean, they lost to a better team that was kind of unassailable. That team could not be pushed anywhere where they couldn't respond, whether it was Terry Porter hitting threes, Clyde Drexler driving down your neck, Jerome Kersey and Buck Williams beating you up, or if all else fails, if you left Kevin Duckworth open on that baseline for that little turnaround half hook, he was going to hit it. And by the way, Cliff Robinson and Danny Ainge are coming off the bench, so, it sucks to be you. That's what you have to have if you really want to talk going into the NBA Finals. You can't just add, God bless Phoenix, but you can't just add a player and have a bunch of holes and think, well, this player is going to carry me through. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said there. And you've kind of got me trying to kind of connect the Blazers to everything that kind of happens. And with this series, I think it kind of draws back to Denver, too. We've got a chance to see them over the last couple of years in the playoffs. And it's just, that team has so many weapons, too. And Jamal Murray, he's approaching that top tier list of guys that when he's got the ball in his hands in the 4th quarter, you got a reason to be scared. And I just thought that their late game execution was just a thousand times better than the Lakers was. The Lakers seem to be a little bit discombobulated, kind of confused with their play calls and whatnot. So we've seen Denver up close and personal firsthand, and they're due. You knew it was going to be a matter of time before they made their big run. And they got Jokic, Michael Porter Jr., Jamal Murray, so many different guys that can punish you and take over a game. So I think it's well-deserved and well overdue at that point.
Yeah, and I guess advocates for keeping Damian Lillard would say Denver stuck with it, right? I mean, they didn't always have. They had injuries last year, and they had some lack of success before, including in 2019 when they got taken on their home floor by the Trailblazers in 7, right? So, look, you can see why people are saying, hey, look, they didn't get rid of Jamal Murray. They didn't get rid of Jokic, right? And now look what they're getting. The asterisk to that is, well, okay, but A, Nikola Jokic is young. B, Nikola Jokic is the MVP or next thing to it every year and completely unique in this league. He's Giannis. I'm not saying Embiid's not right there. I mean, they're comparable. But Jokic, even Embiid, isn't exactly like Jokic. There's nobody like Nikola Jokic in the whole league. There's nobody like Giannis in the whole league. Can you say there's nobody like Dame in the whole league? Maybe in certain slices, but Steph Curry wants a word. Luka Doncic wants a word. John Morant wants a word. There's some other. So there's a slight difference there. Also, sticking with it, like you got to ride with the 5-year window, and the Blazers don't have a 5-year window anymore. They already had it. So it could go either way. But there is some value in that organizational stability, especially for a small market team like Denver.
Yeah, and I think to kind of double down on that, I think it shows the importance of having not only superstar players, but superstar role players. And Denver, I think, has that to a T. We'll get to Miami and Boston, but Miami, they're the same way. Like, on paper, their roster won't jump out at you, but having superstar role players that can step up their play is huge. And Denver kind of reminds me of, like, I don't know if you remember the 2011 Mavericks with Dirk Nowitzki and those guys. Like, they just always had a run for you. They always had, key contributions from, the role players and whatnot, and everybody kind of knew what to do. And they never looked nervous. And Denver kind of, they have that same kind of aura about them. And like I said, it's just, you kind of knew it was coming. You could see that from a mile away with Jokic and Murray, and you just knew it as they got older and their games coalesced more. It was going to work out. And they're right there at the doorstep now, and it's fun to see even from the outside, even being a Blazers observer. It's fun to see how they managed to overcome that and get there.
Pretty awesome. Now, last question on that series. Did you see Austin Reeves' superstar coming in this playoffs run?
I did not. From the regular season, you knew he had some of that good stuff that could take you far, but I didn't really see that. And, he's going to get paid very well for what he's done, so I'd love to see it. Absolutely love to see it.
Restricted free agent. Let's see how long it takes the Lakers to trade him for the next Russell Westbrook. For Fred VanVleet or somebody. All right. So you've got the East now. We thought this was done. A week ago, this was over. Miami led Boston 3-0. Ha-ha. Yay. Playoff Jimmy. Poor Jason Tatum. Goodbye, Jaylen Brown. Now, all of a sudden, Boston comes back and wins 2. Now they have the big one, the road game in Miami on Saturday. It will be today as this releases. What do you make of what's been going on in this series, and how have the Celtics bounced back?
I think the biggest thing was just the shot variance. I think all postseason long, Miami's been able to hit a lot of shots that I think I read in the first round when they played Milwaukee, they had a 10% better chance than expected in terms of making three-pointers, so they were getting a lot of luck with that. And you sort of knew they was going to drop eventually. And now Boston's starting to get their three-pointers to fall too. So I think that's been the big thing is it's just make or miss a lot of times, and they've found some different avenues they can go to. I think they've gotten Grant Williams and those guys more involved. And Boston, credit to them, they don't really have the same aura that they had last year, under Ime Udoka, but they do adjust, and I like the adjustments they made with Robert Williams and whatnot. And I think they're going to end up winning the series.
Yeah, again, the importance of a plan B, although in this case, a really extreme one. You think Boston's going to win this?
I do. I mean, the Jimmy Butler fan in me doesn't want it to happen, but I think that Boston, they're just the more talented team. They've got the better team on paper, and it's kind of hard to erase away. I think Boston was one of 3 teams that had a top 5 offense and defense. So when you have something like that going for you and you've got that big of a sample size, I think that it eventually is going to show out. I think they're going to end up being the better team over the last 2.
Yeah, last week when Miami had just won the first one, I revealed that I kind of wanted to pre-series bet on Miami to win the championship at this point, now that they made it to the conference finals, because the odds were really good. But I have no idea how to bet. I don't even know who to call. So and there's no local bookie here in Boise, Idaho. Here, so could have driven to Las Vegas and put down $1,000 on the Heat and paid off the mortgage. Anyway, too late now, obviously. So I think Miami's still going to win this just because of repetition. I mean, that's the problem going down 3-0. It's not that you're not a quality team. It's not that you can't come back, but you got to do 4, right? And that's hard. But, also of note, it's the inverse Lawler's Law. Instead of first team to 100 wins, it's last team to 100 wins. I mean, the only game 1 had both teams in the 110. Every other game has had the loser hovering around 100. Boston scored 105 in game 2, but 102 in game 3, and the Heat didn't even crack 100 in games 4 and 5. So, the defense, or the shot variance, as you say, could be one way or another. I mean, there could be a cursed leprechaun bouncing back and forth between these teams, but I think that the Celtics have turned it up a little bit defensively and exposed Miami a little bit. As we say, Saturday is the key one, although I wouldn't put it past Jimmy to, even if they lost Sunday, to just put a pie in Boston's face on Game 7. I mean, how tragic would that be? Yeah, we won Game 6. One more at home and we win. And Butler goes, no, right in front of your fans. That would be so Jimmy. But we'll see. It'll be really exciting for sure if they win, tonight from our listeners' perspective.
Yeah, he's already pretty much guaranteed to win twice already, and he's got a body of work to where when he says something, people are going to listen. So I think their best chance is going to be Game 6 in Miami. But I want to ask you, so I went back and looked at the last team to force a Game 7 after being down 3-0, and I'm pretty sure it's the 2003 Portland Trailblazers.
Yeah.
And then they so close to winning it too. Do you remember a lot about that team?
I mean, they came close, although there is an institutional amnesia, honestly, about that entire slide, because that's exactly when the transition to the Jailblazers was in full swing. So it's I do remember thinking, wow, this would resurrect things a bit if they came back. And of course, as it goes on, you root for them. But then when it didn't happen, I mean, the toxicity gets worse. I mean, obviously, burned-in Blazers fans mind much more is the fourth quarter collapse in 2000. I mean, because the Blazers were down, I believe, 3-1 in that one and came back. And it's okay, Game 7, going to win this. 12 minutes, going to win this. Bite me, Lakers. And Lakers no, you don't bite me. I don't bite you. You bite me. Right? So anyway, yeah, those were sad. It was weird with that team. And here, too, I mean, we can relate this to today. Look, the people who say, I want Damian Lillard no matter what. It does sound kind of like a pacifier. Okay, here's your binky. As long as Lillard's here, it'll be okay. But I get it. Because I remember even those successful late 90s, early 2000s traveling all-star teams. And yeah, wanted them to win. And yeah, it would have been great. But I will confess to you, it did not feel the same. It did not feel the same as Drexler. It did not feel the same, even though I was tiny, as the spirit that swept through Portland with Bill Walton. It was, I don't know. And maybe that says more about us, because I think I'm a huge Rasheed Wallace defender. Huge. And even some of the stuff Bonzi did, okay, I don't think it was the worst stuff in the world. It just seemed like at the time. There was a lot of soul searching that Portland needs to do about how they parsed out their relationship with that team. At the same time, as a fan back then, it was going to be a championship, but there was something missing in it just because of that public relationship. So I get the Lillard love and how people want a championship with Dame, that would be the ideal story. The question is whether they can actually get it.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I don't know if I got anything to that, but I see both sides of it. I think there's it's almost like a 50-50 split. It almost seems like with people that want Lillard gone and people that would rather see him, go away. I think for me, I'm still on the fence that I think I'll always be a pro Lillard in that sense. But the win now trades that we've talked about, has it ever really worked? I think is the big question. We've tried that 4 or 5 years in a row, and all we have to show for it is 3 playoff wins. So I don't know. It's difficult to pick a side on that.
I mean, let's parse that out a little bit. I don't think anybody really wants Lillard gone or wants them trade him. Zero, okay, not zero, but a vanishingly small number of people actually want to trade Dame. And almost nobody wants to trade Dame on Dame's own merits. You know what I mean? Everybody agrees. Phenomenal scorer, incredible feat last year, most charismatic player ever, face of the franchise, guy you want. All of those are universally or near universally acclaimed. The question is that the only factor? And there's the dividing line. And all these other factors about age and about, potential success and about opportunity for a rebuild, that's the dividing line. Zero people are going, let's toss this dude. He's trash.
Yeah, there's definitely people in the ring culture that say that he hasn't done anything for Portland, but I think we're all in agreement that that's completely untrue. I don't know. I see both sides of that. I think the big thing at his age now, you want to try to get as much as you can. If you do trade him, it's going to be harder to do that later. But I don't know. I think if it were up to me, I think you either take the number 3 pick and you trade Simons, or you trade the number 3 pick and see what you can get. But I don't know. It's hard to see how it's going to work out right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting too because I get squirmy about this ring culture stuff, and I get what people are saying. But you know what? If you're in the NBA, you need to be in the ring culture. That's what you're playing for, right? And I've been trying to parse out. I haven't come successfully to a good conclusion yet. Otherwise, I'd write about it, right? But my thought is either within the span of the 82 games or as soon as that ball tipped in the first quarter, you have to be ring culture and nothing else. You are there to win. And if you're there for any other reason, that's kind of breaking the contract a little bit. I'm not saying you can't be a human being. I'm not saying, that other things in life don't come up. But within that context, if we're talking about a professional sport, you play that professional sport to win. And anything else is going to break your franchise and break your locker room ultimately because you get other agendas creeping in and you'll never succeed. That said, are rings the most useful metric from which to view a player's career or overall ability? I think they're nearly useless because you can absolutely come up with other things that affect that, including teammates and dominant. I mean, look, Clyde Drexler was phenomenal. He just ran up against Isaiah Thomas and Michael Jordan. And those two things were insurmountable at that time. Doesn't mean Clyde was any less of a player. I think there are basically 3 people in the history of forever who are really can be accurately judged by ring culture, and that's probably Michael and LeBron and Bill Russell. That ring culture is accurate for gauging how great they were. Everybody else, it's completely hit and miss.
Yeah, I think people sort of forget that only one team wins a championship every year. And you look at it, there are so many teams that have never won a championship, have never made the finals. This is Denver's first ever finals appearance. So I think to say that they were a failed franchise for that, I think it's kind of unfair to say. And just thinking about Lillard with his legacy and whatnot, I don't know. I sit back and wonder sometimes, has he really done exactly what we expected or more than we expected? And for him to be able to do what he's done with no all-star teammates since 2015, I don't know. It's hard to say. Like, do you think that he's done exactly what we expected? Do you think he's kind of overachieved or underachieved with what he's had? Or?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what. Well, let me say this too: that only one team wins a championship. Completely accurate to say in the summer. Yep. If you tell me that in the third quarter, I'm gonna bench you. Right? You know what I mean? And even post game, like I have some qualms about that. So again, it's all timing, right? It's all what the context is. And the problem is, I think people want to jump context both ways. I think there are players who just kind of shrug and give up on the season or give up on a game. And it's like, hey, you know what? We are who we are. And that's who we're always going to be. And I'm here collecting a paycheck and writing out this wonderful career. And it's like, well, okay, respect, but you need to go and play alongside LeBron, who doesn't do that. And then you can have that attitude and it won't matter, right? But then there are other people, sports talk wanks and stuff like that, who just go, rings are everything, and he doesn't have a ring, so he sucks. It's like, no, you also need to go somewhere else. Has Dame done what we expect? Look, again, what's your context? You got a 6th pick overall in 2012. 5 players were selected ahead of him. And for the most part, I mean, look, Anthony Davis, sure. Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, you have to look him up, right? Bradley Beal, yeah. Deion Waiters, again, no. And Thomas Robinson, I mean, my gosh, we had him cycle back in for a cup of coffee with the Blazers, right? So, look, has Dame has outplayed, I think, everybody ahead of him except Davis. And even Bradley Beal. I know Bradley scored a lot, but Dame has gotten farther. So, yeah, I would say that not only has Dame done what you'd expect, he's done phenomenally more than you could expect out of the average 6th pick in an average draft. The problem is Dame set his own expectations, and some were set for him culturally, I think, as soon as LaMarcus left. As long as LaMarcus stayed, I think Dame's growth curve could have been normal, right? I mean, it's just like he's a great player. So is LaMarcus. They're going to go far. When LaMarcus left and they repackaged Dame as the savior of the franchise, and to his credit, he stepped up to that very, very quickly. Now, all of a sudden, he's never lost that designation that, by the way, did not come upon him because of just what he was doing. And the Blazers and the people who gave it to him never built around him sufficiently to provide enough infrastructure to support it. Now, all of a sudden, here comes the narrative. Well, Dame didn't do what was expected. All right. Well, at what point, though? What point in time? Last one. So 2012? Sure, he did. 2016 and 17? Well, maybe he fell short of what people were saying about him then. 2022? Oh, hell yeah, he did. 32 years old, scoring 32. He scored his age. He scored 32 points at 32 years old. That's way more. Show me someone else who's doing that. So, yeah, it depends on when you ask and how you ask, but I think it's worth noting that when you say no, you're talking about expectations that were put on him more than the ones that grew organically.
I agree with that 100%. Looking at it like that, he's definitely got kind of thrown into the fire a little bit. And he's found a way to outpunch his weight. I'm thinking back on a lot of his series, other than the 2018 Pelican series. I think that every other one, I think you can say he either won it or he went out swinging in a loss, and maybe you didn't expect him to win that series. So it's kind of fun to think about. I kind of wonder that from seeing people talk all the time about he didn't win a championship. He hasn't had as much success as, some of the other guards in the league and some of the players in the league. So hopefully they give him one more chance. I think it's going to be kind of fun to see if they decide to trade that pick or if they can, get a little bit older or what they do. But I'd love to see them go one more run and then try to find that perfect balance between trying to win now and win later with him. I think it's doable, even if a championship isn't, the end result per se.
Well, and that's really interesting because the hot debate swirling right now. Now we've been through trade rumors season. Now we're sitting and taking stock of all the rumors that are coming out because there's literally no player who's been mentioned in the entire league that's even vaguely possible who hasn't been connected with Portland at some point. So we've got all the possibilities on the board. And what Blazers fans are saying right now is, what? That's it? I mean, we were talking Joel Embiid like a couple months ago, and now you're telling me we're looking at Wendell Carter Jr. for the number 3 pick and Anthony Simons? What? So here's the big question. What do you think that number 3 pick is really worth? I mean, is it enough in itself to pull a superstar? And here's the thing, too. Can the Blazers get value in trading it that would be better than the value they get by using it?
Based on what I've read this week, it doesn't seem to have as much value. If we're talking about Wendell Carter Jr. and Gary Harris and guys like that, with all due respect to them, the Blazers probably expected, and the fans at that too, they probably expect to see something a lot bigger. And on the Woj pod earlier today, they talked about how they were trying to trade for a pretty elite player. So I think that's a pretty low step compared to what we're kind of expecting. I know there's been some names. You got Pascal Siakam and Jaylen Brown and guys like that. I feel like you're gonna have to trade in order to get that, trade the number 3 pick in order to get them. So I don't know. I felt a lot better about it a couple weeks ago, but I don't feel as bullish about what's going to be what the return is going to be for it now though.
All right, I'm going to name some names for you, and then you can tell me yes or no whether you do it, and it would be like number 3 Simons or whatever. But also, I should say this. Here's how the fan mind works, because I hear a lot of this. So, like, Blazers fans, like, talk about trading it, right? It's like, if it was the number 6 pick, and all things were equal, they would be saying, well, the Blazers got number 6. The Dame was at number 6. We can get a great player. Then you got the number 3 pick in a deep year, and you're going like, well, no, that's not. We will be better off trading that. We got Dame with number 6. He's literally the guy you're trying to preserve. So I get the timing issue, but yeah, I think that's actually a pretty high value, that pick staying here and being you. But let's assume we got to trade it, and let's assume we got to package Ant with it for salary purposes and probably some other players to gather the kind of person we're talking about. So we know Embiid's always on the table. Jaylen Brown, sign and trade, I would assume. Or, we'd have to figure out how to do that. But would you take Jaylen Brown for that package?
I'm saying yeah to that. I'd take Jaylen Brown, yeah.
Okay. Pascal Siakam?
I felt a little bit better about it a couple months ago, but I'm like 50-50. I'll probably lean no, just because of like what I talked about a couple weeks ago. He's going to be 30 years old by the time the playoffs come around next year. And we've seen his production kind of decline a little bit. I think there was a long stretch between like December and like mid-March where he was like number 1 in minutes. And, the production just wasn't there as it was earlier in his career. So I'd be kind of worried about that. But there are a lot worse things you can do. So I wouldn't mind that either, though.
Yeah, I think I'd do it. I mean, they've been playing him at center. They've been playing him in weird positions and expecting him to do way too much. And I think he'd fit in great with Dame. So if you're going to make a move, I'd make that one, I think. Let's assume, I think Jimmy Butler's off the table now, don't you? I mean, I don't think you could get him anymore.
He's untouchable now. If he wasn't our...
Need to use that playoff game. Draymond Green we wouldn't consider for that package, I assume, because that would be absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
So here's an interesting one in the middle, though. Cat, Karl-Anthony Towns.
I'm leaning a big no in that sense. He's got a monstrous contract, and I think we talked about that before too. Like, I don't really think that he can be your number 1 or your number 2 guy if you're trying to pursue a championship. And with all due respect to him, he just doesn't raise his game to the level that I think you want to see from a superstar player. So I'll probably see if you can go elsewhere. I think he's a great player, but I think there are better fits for him.
Yeah, I would say, no. Karl-Anthony Towns will be the kind of guy who looks great for about 35 games. And I don't mean the first 35. They're going to pop up here and there. But, oh boy, you just don't. And to talk about playoff weaknesses, look, I'm not denying that he could win you a playoff game or 2 all on his own. He can. But, oh boy, you're not going to want to depend on him systemically. There's a big hole in the wall there defensively. Which, again, next to Dame, not good. Nurkic is not a great defender in my estimation. People bring up stats that, whatever. But, having watched Nurk for 7 years now, like, he just doesn't move fast enough and consistently enough for me to call him a good defender. But Nurkic would defend much better and does defend much better than Karl-Anthony Towns does. It would take every problem the Blazers have and magnify it. So I'm a big no on that. I'm trying to think of who else is reasonably available that would rise to that level. That's the problem, is the list of these players is pretty short, right?
I don't know if I imagined it, but I could have sworn I seen something about like Anthony Simons and DeMar DeRozan, which I'm not saying I would do that because the age difference there is huge, and DeMar's another guy. His postseason resume isn't the greatest, right. But kind of interesting to think about.
So if we're talking the pick, and and Simons for anyone from Chicago? No, that's you could throw that in Lake Erie. That's not gonna. You can go jump in Lake Erie after it too. I'm not taking Zach LaVine. I'm not taking DeMar DeRozan for any kind of big package. And you know what? Even DeRozan, you got to play him at small forward here, right? I mean, if he comes in, you assume you have some guard left, because if you've traded Sharp and Simons for DeRozan, I think the Blazer fans will dismantle the Moda Center brick by brick right now.
Yeah, your future is over if you do that. So I'm on board with that.
Yeah, I mean, and here's the problem, right? Once you take away those, okay, you're window shopping at Tiffany's, right? You're like, Joel Embiid, look, honey, it's Giannis. Maybe I'll get you that for an engagement ring. And it's like, oh, you're so sweet. In the back of your mind, you're going, I can't afford that. Like, I'll go to Zales and I'll get something. It's 3/4 of a carat princess cut. She'll like it anyway. And it's like, this is the problem with the Blazers. Like, okay, once you take out Giannis and Embiid, it gets pretty bad pretty quick. You're going, oh, come on, Siakam. I hope that they have a discount on my, boutique jewelry store here, because otherwise, we are mass market here. And the problem is, this is the thing, is that currency doesn't scale, right? The third pick is the third pick almost no matter what, give or take who is taken there. You can't get change for it. Well, I guess you can get the 11th, but you can't make the third pick into 2 and pay less. You're paying the third pick. You can't divide Anthony Simons or rent him out for half the year. These assets are literally gone for the trade you make, and they're not coming back. I think Portland is bumping up against that reality.
Yeah, and it's going to hit them too if they don't figure something out. And I think you said it a couple of weeks back. The timing of it is just always just a little bit off. The guys that Portland could potentially get, you always either get them where they're it's used goods. Where Siakam, he's already played 7 years with Toronto, and other than Jaylen Brown, I don't know. It feels like everybody else has kind of been there and done that, and maybe they don't have as much left in the tank. So I don't know. It's going to be very hard to kind of navigate between not giving away your entire future, but also still putting a championship contending team around you. And for that reason, I think that I'm almost kind of just taking somebody at number 3. If you can get Brandon Miller at number 3 and trade Simons, you can run out a pretty big, versatile lineup. So, I don't think that's the worst case scenario. But it'd be fun to see how it plays out, though.
Well, and we do realize, folks, that trades can happen later, too, right? If the right deal doesn't come along with the number 3 pick, they can still happen with the player you selected number 3, right? So, look, the idea would be everything's set going into June and you know what you're going to do. But if that doesn't happen, you take the best player available and you run with it. And you play him and you try to explain it to Dame, look, either this guy's going to be so good he's going to change your mind, or we're going to develop this asset and then move it, but we can't make a deal right now that you're going to like, right?
Yeah, I think you just got to keep every option open. And they've got the number 23 pick too, so you just got some leverage there. And I think this is a much better position to be in than we maybe previously thought with the number 6 or 7 pick. So just hoping for the best, but I don't know. It's going to be tough. There are so many unattainable elite players, but also I think everybody else under that, you don't want to give up too much. So it's hard to say at this point.
So here's another possibility that has come up, though, which is trading down. And we've heard Indiana and we've heard Orlando. And let's not worry about, let's assume something decent is coming back for that. Just on the basis of the draft pick, would you feel comfortable trading out of 3 to 6 or 7 or even lower?
I don't think it's a terrible idea. I probably wouldn't. But it's not the worst draft to do it because there are so many different similar skill sets and play styles and whatnot. You got so many 6'8", 6'7", 6'9" guys that are super athletic and can do so many different things on the floor that they may not be as good as say Brandon Miller, but you can get something that kind of compensates for that and you get 2 guys instead of 1. So I think it's definitely an option. But I think that if you were to ask me today, I think I would go with the number 3 and just keep that. But it's definitely something to think about with just how similar guys are, though.
I really wish Utah didn't excel this year, or that they had something that the Blazers would want, because that would be a nice little trade, cha-cha. They're at number 9, which is not infinitely far out of the draft, and you could see them paying really handsomely to move up to the top 3. But the problem is, Lauri Markkanen's about the only guy that you'd even consider wanting, because everybody else they have is a guard, or Kelly or Olynyk, which is not, it's not in the conversation. So, yeah, I mean, Utah has got maybe the right motives, but the wrong players. Orlando, maybe, but as you say, that's that's dicey, right? The thing is, if you move down, you've got to have at least one asset that you go, this definitely bridges the gap between a good guy and a potential franchise-changing guy. And I'm not sure even Orlando has that they'd give up anyway. Indiana, I have no idea what they'd give up anyway, either, rather. Is there anyone from the Pacers that you would even consider swapping picks for? I mean, Miles Turner, would that do it for you?
I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence. If you would have asked me, I think I'd almost kind of rather have Walker Kessler from Utah. I don't think you trade him for the number 3 pick, but he's an elite rim protector, and he's only going to get better with his age. You like him too?
I was assuming they
Kessler.
weren't going to give him up, but I'd think about that. Anyway, go for it. Sorry.
I was going to say, thinking about it now, I don't think it'd be too terrible if you left the draft with, say, one of the Thompson brothers at number 6, and then you got Jarris Walker at number 11 or something like that. So I don't know. I'm kind of warming up to the idea. I think I'm still on the fence. I'm still on the side of keeping the number 3 pick, but there's so many different options with that number 3 pick that we didn't expect to have. So it's kind of fun to see. But no, I don't want to take nobody from Indiana though.
So, yeah, you wouldn't. So if Indiana came to you and said, Miles Turner and number 7 that they have for Yusuf Nurkic, maybe Keon Johnson and number 3, would you do that?
Oh, it's very tempting because you can. I always get this phrase wrong, but you can kill 2 birds with the same stone. If you do that, you got a mobile defensive center, more versatility there, and you don't fall back too much. I think that I definitely think about that idea. I wouldn't hang up the phone. What about you? Would you do it?
It's tempting, and I have not heard this one. We may have just come up with it here. So, I mean, just in the last 10 seconds, you may have heard one of the possible moves. Turner's got 2 years left on his contract at $20 million or 21, and then it declines to 20 next year. So the contract is right. You're not paying him much more than you're paying Nurkic. You can still fiddle around with the luxury tax. He's 28 years old, which is fine. I mean, he's right in the gap, same gap Nurkic is in. I think he improves the Blazers athletically. If you're going to trade the number 3 pick and you really don't think that player is going to help you, you could do a lot worse. That would be a way to split the middle. You get one young lottery player, especially if you like someone at Indiana's level at the number 7 pick. If you're going like, okay, there's this guy that I really like that I think, Brandon Miller's better, but this guy will be a future in Portland or have a future. And Miles Turner helps me right now. It would be an elegant way to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, as you say.
I think it's actually a well thought out trade for you to come up with that in 10 seconds, just because of what it does for the win now and the win later. So it's definitely fun to think about. I think it's definitely a Blazers kind of move. There's not really many home runs to be hit for the Blazers at the number 3 or in general, just because of them being in such a small market and not really having all of the resources that other teams do. So I think it's definitely a Blazers type move. I think it would signify to Damian Lillard that you are thinking win now without sacrificing your entire future. And if you can do that trade and still keep, leverage to Trey Simons and guys like that, then I think it's definitely something to think about. So I think it's a good trade.
So we shall call that the Dave. If they pull the Dave trade, there we go. All right. Well, oh boy. So our consensus is that, you know what, as much as Blazer fans want it to be, and it is worth a lot in trade. It's worth, I mean, we're talking about significant names here, sure. But number 3 alone is not enough to pry a super elite player. And the number of players right below that level is rapidly dwindling to Pascal Siakam, right? and a couple others that people are going to try to sell you are at that second tier, but aren't really. So is that our consensus that, yeah, it's worth a lot, but there's not the right stuff to buy with it? And so it might be worth more executed or in kind of a hybrid trade. Is that where we landed?
I think we're pretty much on consensus with that. You know, other than Brown and Siakam, it's kind of hard to envision both sides seeing it as a beneficial trade. So I think we're both on the same page with that. Yeah.
Yeah, you got it. Okay, so we'll have asterisks for Jaylen Brown and Pascal Siakam. Everybody else is either a no or can't get them at this point.
Much.
With also the trade down being to Indiana. I guess we didn't check Orlando, but we've been through that, right? I mean, that's not enough. It's the Hakeem Olajuwon problem, right? Or Ralph Sampson, whichever one of them was traded for the draft. The draft pick was traded for like 5 good players, and then regretted that for years. It's the same thing. Okay, so of consistent buzz in the Blazer universe, of course, is still what Dame is going to do. I don't know that we know anything else new here. It's like, is this just going to be in the washing machine? Now, admittedly, I wrote a couple of summary pieces this week about this issue. But part of the frustration is that both sides are right about the point that they are making. But neither side agrees on which point should be decisive. Right? It's like one side's arguing that, Kentucky Fried Chicken is great for dinner. That's fine. Another side is arguing that Subarus are also good to drive. That's fine. And they're trying to make a decision. Is it chicken or is it Subarus? Right? And it's like, okay, nobody's putting it all in context or putting it all together, finding a way to marry these two. And so people are fighting like cats and dogs about this. The front office can't be divided like this, right? They've got to have an overall plan, one would hope, right?
Yeah, you would hope. But this is one of those weird times where it feels like everybody's kind of quiet about what the next move is going to be. So it's kind of hard to. I think we're going to really have a hard time with this conversation until like a couple days before the draft, or actually during the draft, maybe too. So I don't know. It's hard to say. I think we've kind of had the discussions with what we're going to do with Damian Lillard and who they're going to bring on board, but I was thinking about this too with the Siakam. Isn't he on like a 1-year like expiring deal too?
Yes, he is.
So like, it's already kind of similar to Jeremy Grant then. So if you dodge lightning once, now you got to dodge it twice with Siakam. And my question now is the situation in Toronto that much worse or better than Portland? So it's going to be tough to see how that plays out too.
Yeah, with him, it's in for a penny, in for a billion. I mean, it's the same thing that the Blazers have got to resign. Now, Grant, I believe, will resign here because the Blazers will offer him the house. And they have to, and people don't understand this yet. They have to, because if he leaves, they get nothing. Right? Not only did they lose their pick, they also lost a trade chip. And even making $30 million. See, what's part of the problem with Portland right now? You've got Anthony Simons making $25 million, Yusuf Nurkic making $15, and no one else has a contract that can leverage these trades. That's why you see people are up in arms. Anthony Simons is in every trade, and he's a really good player. Well, yes, because you have to have him in there because he's the only one who makes any money in that middle ground, right? So he has to be included in the trade. And now you're looking, okay, Simons and number 3, you're like, well, we better get Joel Embiid for that. And it's like, no, you can't. You have to throw him in to get a lesser player because that's all you can afford. That's going to happen if the Blazers don't sign Grant. They're going to still have that big donut in the middle of their roster salary-wise, and they're not going to get salary cap money to change or to sign somebody who could fill his place. He's not going to create any if he leaves. So they're going to spend a mint on him. Pascal Siakam, if you just spent Simons and the number 3 pick and whatever else to get him, you cannot. That's sunk cost. You are committing to whatever he wants for the rest of his life, basically, to re-up him the next year.
Yeah, I agree with that. I know the deadline's coming up for Jeremy Grant, but I've got a lot of hope in if that lineup does materialize where you get Siakam and Grant, and Sharp and Lillard and whoever else we got in there. I think it's I'm not gonna say a championship contender, but something very close. I think they get to the second round, and you just have to hope that that's enough for Siakam to persuade him to stand. If it happens. So I don't know. It's fun to think about, but also very, very stressful too.
Well, and that's the scary part is it's not getting better, right? Like you're not forecasting an upward growth curve. You've crested the hill and you're trying to add passengers to the car as you're rolling down it, right? And it's like, oh, this is not Siakam's got to perform now. And you're going to pay him $1 billion to stay for the next 5 years. And that production's going to keep going down. And it's going to go down for Lillard too. And now all of a sudden you're going to be paying $100 million to them, let alone Jeremy Grant, who's making 30. So now you're at like 130 minimum by the time you get 2 or 3 years into this for those 3 players. And only Grant has upward growth curve yet. Oh boy. And you're not going to the lottery again, or this is a disaster, right? And you didn't keep Simons. I guess you have Sharp. You pray to keep Sharp because there's the big the big growth curve. So Lillard, and you hope Sharp is a superstar, Siakam doesn't diminish, and Grant stays steady. That's a lot to hope on. I mean, is it more to hope on than drafting number 3? Maybe, maybe not. There's hopes involved in that too. But oh boy, the desperation is dripping from that plan.
Yeah, I think it's going to put a lot of pressure on the Blazers front office to ace every other test that they have, whether it's undrafted free agents, mid-level exception in future years and things like that. They've got to be able to ace that if they're going to tie that much money into 3 or 4 guys. So I got a lot of confidence in them based on what they did with Shaedon Sharp and Jabari Walker and guys like that. But it's going to be tough. They got another test coming up again, just a couple of weeks. So I think I feel like it's a lot of pressure on them.
Well, and here's the other thing. It's like in those scenarios, like people say, well, the Blazers can get a mid-level player. Well, first of all, no, they probably can't, or they have to be very careful because their $11 million mid-level player, or it'd be like 8 or 9 because they're over the tax. You can easily quadruple that with luxury tax penalties. So now you're paying $30 million for an $8 million player, right? And also with the new rules, you can very easily fall afoul of that second apron. Right. And again, they're not going to do it now, but think re-signing Grant, re-signing Siakam. That it's a fortune. And you're only like 20, 25 million away from that apron. I'm doing the figures in my head, so that may be a little bit more than that. But that's 20 or 25 million literally for the other 11 players on your team. You can't sign a $9 million guy in that. You're going to hit the second apron and your MLE is going to be taken away from you. So, this has got to be it. You've got to be confident that literally this quartet, if Sharp is still in there, is the one that's going to take you to the promised land because you'll not be able to make changes. And by the way, it's not going to, you have to be presuming an ownership that was willing to pay that. Do you think this ownership's willing to go into the luxury tax? Because I kind of don't.
I would lean no.
I mean, it feels like they are like, this is cute, this is fun, and yeah, we kind of want to win, and since we have this car in the garage, we'll drive it. But if you think I'm mortgaging my house to keep this car, you're crazy, right? So they'll make it go as fast as it can, but they're not going to get work done.
Yeah, I mean, every decision I feel like they've made, over the last couple of years is basically said that they want to get younger, get more youthful. So I don't know. It's kind of hard to get a read on exactly what's going on. And I think that's a problem to have, at this point in the year. I don't know. If you really the Blazers GM, do you think that you would try to go all in on winning now, or would you rather see them kind of get younger or reload?
Yeah, I was just going to say that. The one person I don't want to be right now is Joe Cronin. Because it feels like that there are like 4 or 5 different waves of expectation. There's the media critique. There's the fan expectation, which is either trade Dame and get younger or keep Dame and get better. And then there's what ownership wants, and by the way, who is ownership? Is it Jody Allen? Is it Burt Coldy at Vulcan? It's probably both. So now you've got, while the media is critiquing you, you've got fans who are saying two different things and a potential of ownership saying at least one and a half different things. And by the way, you can't spend money, at least unless you can conclusively convince somebody that it's worth it, which is a hard task. So, like, I'm going to be real honest with you. I'm not sure there is a winning scenario for Cronin here, except for I think the rebuild is the easier one. You know, as hard as it is to trade Dame, I think at least that one gets cheaper and you can sell the hope more. Boy, if you trade for Siakam, there's about 5 minutes of woo and like 5 years of, oh boy, hold on.
Yeah, it feels like that's a path the Blazers have kind of taken before too. So I don't know. I'm kind of with you. It's a very tough situation for Cronin. He's got a lot of voices in his ears. You know, I think it's tough. I think he can maybe win some support if he does trade Dame and he trades him to a winning team and gives him a chance to win a championship. But I don't know. I'm kind of with you. I wouldn't want to be in their shoes right now. I don't know. It's tough. It's tough to kind of think about.
Here's one more question on this trade thing. Bill Simmons brought up the possibility, I believe, of the Blazers actually trading Damian Lillard to the Celtics or Jaylen Brown. Would you do that?
I don't know. When Lillard was talking about guys that he thought moved the needle, the first name I thought of was Jaylen Brown. So I think it'd be kind of counterproductive. But I think Brown definitely has another level he can reach. You know, it's been kind of tough for him as a number 2 guy. But I don't know. I don't think that's necessarily something that's out of the realm of possibility. Like if you want to, you can actually make a bet on teams that Lillard can go to. I think it's Portland at number 1, and then they got like Philadelphia, Boston, New York, Los Angeles, teams like that. So people are thinking about that too. But I don't know. I think if you trade Damian Lillard, that's the best you can get. I think you do it. But I don't know. I feel like at 32, coming off an All-NBA season, I think there's more room for him to continue to grow and maybe have another couple of more years we can contend for a title.
Yeah, people are saying, too, that the trade market for Dame is pretty bare because a lot of people have made trades and sent out a lot of picks. But you know what? For a player of Dame's level, things can always get done. It's kind of like the guy who goes in the back door of the restaurant instead of the front because of who you are. If somebody wants Dame and the Blazers want to trade him, they will find a way to get 3 and 4 teams involved to get the assets right. Now, it may not be a direct, it may not be as obvious as you think, but I don't see any future in which the Blazers go, okay, market's open for Dame, and the NBA goes, nah, we're just going to give you scraps.
Yeah, I don't really worry about it because not only are there always going to be superstars that play with other superstars, but there are also always going to be, I think, GMs that are willing to bite the bullet on something like that. You know, I think there's a reason why you got guys like Russell Westbrook that still get paid upwards of $40 million, and teams are still trying to figure him out. Or a guy like John Wall, things like that. So I think that somebody's always going to be willing to take a chance on that, even as he ages. And Dame has so much respect around the league, you know, from different star players. It wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility to see him with Los Angeles, with LeBron James and guys like that. So that's not I don't think I really worry about that. I think what I worry about is what team is paying him as his contract continues to balloon as he gets older. So I think that's more the worrisome problem right now.
Yeah, and that's the argument I made about, you know, on the pro trade Dame side in my article was that, and I think this is real. He scored 32 this year. If he drops to 25 next year, and 25 is an enormous amount of points to score in this league, okay? But if he drops 7 points, it feels like that's kind of a disaster for his value. Now, you can parse, like, okay, is he playing more of a team game? Has he got more talent around him? He's pulling back? Sure. But his salary is going up and up and up. It's going to hit $60 million in a couple years. And I think teams will be willing to take a chance for a guy who scores 30. I think a guy who scores 25 when he did score 32, people are going like, oh, what's next, right? Is he going to go down to 20? Is he going to go down to 22? I like 22, but I'm not paying $60 million for 22. Well, what else can he do? Well, he gets assists. Well, yeah, most point guards do nowadays. I don't want to disparage Dame, but assists is there are a lot of players with that 20x and 7 and 5 or 20x and 5 and 5 line, right? It's this, your first 5 assists are kind of like the free space on bingo. Okay. Everybody gets it. But then does he defend? Well, no, not really. We're going to have to compensate for that. Does he have a winning track record? Well, yeah, I mean, he's Dame, but asterisk. Okay, so tell me what I'm paying $60 million for. It's a scorer whose scoring is declining. Unless I'm the Lakers or the Knicks, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, I can see that argument too. I'm kind of on like a little bit of the other side where I'm thinking like he's even at 33, I think he's still going to be capable of doing things that 95% of the league can't do. He's got a game that, other than the quick first step and the athleticism, I think the world-class shooting and the intangible fact that he brings off the court, I think you can kind of make that case for it too. But I think both sides have an argument with that, as they do with all things. So
yeah, I'm not worried about it with 33. That's next year, right? I mean, I think that's why you trade him right now, right? But I'm saying he goes through a full year, he scores 25. Is his value next summer, with the ballooning contract and the extra year and now declining statistical production, is his value next summer as high as it is this summer? I would say no. And I would say very soon after, if that continues at that level or continues to decline, his value is not going to be great at all. And this is, I think, the argument that people are making for why you need to trade Dame, because if you're going to do it, it's not a thing where you can wait 2 years and then decide to do it. You will not get the same return.
Yeah, I can see that too. I look at it kind of similar to the whole Kevin Durant situation where he was 35 and we were willing to give up multiple draft picks to get him. So, I think until people see it, I think there's a front office out there that's still going to believe that he's still a bit younger than maybe you think. So, I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence about it. I hopefully there's a situation where you can win now without having to give up your assets. So it's hard to say though.
Yeah, I mean, I want to be on your side. I will hop into your vehicle and you can drive us. That's fine. Before I do though, I mean, I would say that there's a huge difference between Durant and Dame, like 8 inches of height to begin with, and one of those generational MVP talents. And Dame is great, but he's not that. And his game, here's what I worry about specifically. That step, that quick first step, because that's the basis of his 9.6 free throw shots per game, right? And he's shooting like 90%. So that's if that goes away, if that even gets slower, he's not drawing those fouls in the same way. And players are now able to play up on him more, which will also inhibit the three-point shooting. Now, I'm not saying he couldn't move off ball or do a lot of other things. I'm not saying he couldn't pull it out of his bag now and again. But if you're talking about the machine, the all-star, the all-NBA player, I think a lot more is dependent on his athleticism at this point than we think. And as soon as that goes, I think he's good. I think he's very good. I will never say anything bad about Damian Lillard. But I don't think he's a guy that you mortgage the farm for and pay $60 million to without those aspects.
Yeah, I think that's fair. You want to get peak value, I think you have to kind of do it now. And based on what Lillard's been saying, I think he said this past year, this is the best that he's really ever felt. So, I think if it takes that, you got to file that away and think about that when you make that trade offer. So, yeah, if there was time to do it, just like everything else with the Blazers, I think the time is now. So, I don't know. It's hard.
It's tough. Well, and the reason to bring this up, and then we'll close, is that, okay, because people say, well, the draft pick, it's totally speculative, and you don't know what that player is going to do, and there's a lot of ifs. And you're right, and there's probably more ifs in that direction than in staying the course. But there are a lot of ifs now in staying the course, too. This is not 2018. Again, we just mentioned Pascal Siakam, who I think is about as good as you can get, and both of us would probably do that deal. There's ifs with Pascal, whether he stays, whether his production stays high, whether he can fit in with Jeremy Grant. There's ifs with Damian Lillard that we just talked about, right? There's ifs with time. There's ifs with what the rest of the West is going to do. And does Kevin Durant gel in Phoenix and all of this is a waste of time anyway, because they're going to be the conference champ? Or does Denver become a powerhouse, or et cetera, et cetera? It's not like this way of going steady is question-free. It's just a matter of which questions the Blazers feel are most serious and which ones they're willing to tackle.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. And I think another question is it championship or bust? We kind of talked about that, but I don't know if fans think that trading for Siakam is going to lead to a championship. So I don't know if expectations should be tempered or whatever happens. It's kind of hard to say because it depends on the fan. It depends on the observer. But I don't know if a second round appearance and getting back to the postseason, just getting back into relevance is enough for you. Then I think there are options to do that. But it's hard to just envision a championship picture for this team without injuries and whatnot. So,
well, let me ask you that then. We'll ask you that to close. Let's assume you're correct. The Blazers cannot win a championship, no matter who they trade for, because it's just not realistic. It can't happen. They can't get Embiid, and anyone south of that is not going to do it, okay? So we know they can't win a championship, basically. Do you still move that 3 pick then?
For Siakam or Brown, you're saying? Or just in general?
Yeah, anyone. Like, let's take Siakam. Let's say it's Brown, but you know they're not going to win a title because it cannot be done getting from here to there in Dame's timeline. Let's presume that what you said, somehow we have perfect knowledge that there is no championship forthcoming, no matter what move they make this summer. Do you trade away the 3? And I don't mean like if you keep the 3rd pick. I mean like there's no championship in Dame's tenure by trading for a veteran now. You're going to trade for a veteran. You're going to get to the 2nd round, maybe to the conference finals if you're lucky, but that's going to be it. And then Dame's career is going to be over in a few years. Do you move that 3rd pick under those circumstances?
I still do, because I think the biggest thing is just giving yourself a chance. You got to give yourself a shot at the dance and seeing what you can do, because you just never know how things break. We've seen with 2019, the bracket kind of broke for them in a way where Golden State used to have to play each other. This past year, you saw it where injuries and different circumstances allowed for a team like that it was just wide open. This is as wide open as the West has been. So I think you give yourself a chance, and having a guy like Siakam and putting him with Grant and Lillard, you're giving yourself a chance where you have 3 different all-stars on the court at the same time with another generational talent, potential generational talent, and Shaedon Sharpe. So all of that considered, you never know what might break your way, and if you are in position to take advantage of that, I think you try to give yourself a shot to take advantage of that. So I do.
There you have it. Marlow Ferguson, trade the pick, and Simons, and go for it now. All right. Well, I'm sure we'll have more to say next week. We'll also know who our NBA finalists are and have game 1 under our belt. So, do you think Denver's going to win it no matter who comes out of the East?
I'll tell you this. I'm a betting man, and I've got Denver. So I got Denver. I got Denver going all the way.
All right. Well, one of these podcasts over the summer, you're going to have to teach me how to actually place a bet. So there we go. For Marlow Ferguson, I am Dave Deckard, and we will talk to you next week.